Binder number 3. This binder, about maybe over half is not for trade. This is not for trade. That's not for trade. This is not for trade. This is not for trade. This is not for trade. Well, this whole page right here is not for trade. That's for trade. That's for trade. These right here are not for trade, but this is. Not for trade, not for trade, not for trade, not for trade, sorry, may trade, not for trade, not for trade, will trade, not for trade, not for trade, will trade, will trade, not for trade, not for trade, not for trade, damn, not for trade, not for trade, not for trade, not for trade, will trade, not for 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 trade, may trade, not for trade, not for trade, will trade, may trade, not for trade, not for trade, not for trade, not for trade, these are already being traded. Not for trade, not for trade, not for trade. Will trade, will trade, will trade, not for trade, and not for trade. Will trade, not for trade, not for trade, not for trade. Not for trade, not for trade, not for trade. Not for trade, not for trade, and not for trade. This whole page not for trade. Not for trade. Not for trade. Will trade, not for trade. The 2 X units may trade. These were not for trade, those are not for trade. Bubble Man Super, I will trade. These 2, no. These 3, no. These 3, no. Diamond Dude, I will trade, but these 2, no. These, no. And 1 Birdman I will trade, but the other 2, no. None of this is for trade. We'll trade him. Oh, I'm keeping 1, so not, will not trade. Will trade, Phoenix Chain. Trigodia will trade, and Stardust Phantom I will not trade. May trade. Giant Tornado I won't, but we'll trade those, got multiples. Will trade, won't trade, won't trade, will not trade. I got multiple places of skill drain, so I will trade that. Everything else on this page is not for trade. Will trade. Everything else is not for trade on this page. Will trade. Will trade. I got multiples of him. I guess I will trade. I got 2 playsets. And will trade. Everything else, no. Super. Will trade. Will trade. Ultra First Edition Necro Shade will trade. These will not. Not for trade. Nothing on this page. Will trade. Pretty sure none of you guys want any of these guys, so I mean, probably a would trade, but worth crap. Will not trade those. Won't trade anything on this page. I will trade dual terminal Yugioh Gus Kraken. Will not trade. Not trade. Well, will trade the Veilers. Will not trade any of these. Will trade. Will not trade. I'll trade 1. Will not trade. Will trade. Will trade. Will not trade. Will not trade. Will not trade. Will trade. Will trade. Will not trade. Will not trade. Will not trade. Will not. Will trade the rare Bubble Man. Won't trade. I have multiples of him, but I'm sure anybody can get him right now, so will not trade. Well, I will trade this. I'm looking to sell or trade real good for this. I value it at $60, nothing less than 60. Will trade, will trade, will trade, will trade, will trade, will trade. I got an ulti and a ultra Hanzo. Will trade. I got a playset of those. Will trade, will trade. I'll trade. This is from the pack, not the tin. I'll trade everything on this. This one's traded, but I will trade pretty much. This is from the pack, Excalibur. I'll trade everything on this page and everything on this page, but Grand Soil might be already bought, depending if he gets back to me soon. I'll trade everything up here. Will not trade, will not trade, will not trade. I'll trade that. Will not trade. I'll trade Shiny Elf. I'll just tell you what I will trade. Will trade. Will trade. This is super. Will trade. Will not trade that, but we'll trade those two. Will not trade. Not trade. Will trade. Will not trade. This is the rare from the Duelist pack. I will not trade. Oh yeah, I will trade. I mean, but I value it at like $12-13. Will trade. Everything on this page will trade, and possibly everything except the wisdom on this page. And that is binder 3. Get back to me as soon as possible.